next up, we have a slightly different format, which I'm very excited about. More of a fireside chat, even though we don't really have a fire. It's going to be a chat between myself and Pete Sensier, who's the Director of Digital Marketing for GoCompare. I have the delight of working alongside Pete, so looking forward to this one. So I'm going to move over and start the conversation. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very good. Paul, yourself?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Thank you for joining us this morning. Is it, if it's still this morning? I don't know. We're actually at midday yet. Oh, we're still this morning.
Yeah, definitely. You're still in the morning.
Still in the morning. Good. It's very dark in here, so I don't really know. Look, obviously everybody knows the GoCompare brand. Everyone will know the TV ads and the new ads that have come out during lockdown. You obviously choose to manage a lot of your kind of digital activity in-house. I'd love it if you could just share a bit about why and what you've built in-house to be able to deliver that capability.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the why front is sort of between 2 or 3 core reasons, really. I guess the volume and frequency of work that the team get through just to remain competitive in our sector is fairly key in that respect. I mean, the PPC team or the pay team are checking multiple performance levers throughout the day, every day across all products. CRM and SEO are equally, busy looking at how they're optimizing content, building new campaigns. In short, we have a very sort of high demand on resource, right? It needs to be, it's dedicated resource. So I guess that flows into the second piece, which is around cost effectiveness. I mean, if we were to service that through an agency where we're paying for full-time staff at the numbers that we're looking at internally, it's evidently going to be more expensive than an FTE model that we've currently got. Right. And those two things massively play into the overall trade and profit focus we have as a business. I'm sure most businesses are too, but our verticals are pretty competitive, which has a fairly significant impact on the cost of traffic that we sometimes have to acquire. And naturally, if we can get the same level of resource and kind of like output at lower cost, that it massively improves our margin. But which I think that's really why we sort of in-house. But we don't do it all by ourselves, mm-hmm. right? We're very performance focused, but we're not precious about how we get to those numbers, right? We're precious about hitting the numbers. That's what we really care about. Not to the point that we go cutting corners, but it does mean that at times, we're very happy to kind of lean on expertise of those that have done it before, on their knowledge and their know-how, particularly when we're trying to solve problems. To the example, with yourselves, right? We're working with you on an incrementality test on display, which we're running through or via Adform, our new network that we partnered with. And we don't have certainly the kickoff, we didn't have the expertise internally to launch it, traffic on the new platform, and to build the test in a way that allowed us to interrogate it for, I guess, what I would refer a slightly more rigorous incrementality test than the average that's out there, right? So we've been very happy to do that. It's going to get us to our end point, which is understanding exactly our targetable KPIs. And, that's with you guys. We work with outreach agents for SEO. We've got, copywriting skills for our agency across through the funnel, and we've got a tech partner for our Facebook. So we definitely lean on parts. It's just where it's cost effective.
Yeah, it's the right mix. Skill set. Got it. Yeah, no, and I think that's very good for people to hear, like where things plug in and how you manage it. And as you say, ultimately, it's about whether it drives incremental performance. So this morning we've had Cheryl from the CEO of Eve Sleep, and we've had Jasper from Pension B talking about how they've kind of grown from performance marketing to investing on TV to grow their brand. Clearly, you invest a huge amount awareness, consideration above the line, and then on digital. How do you get that right mix and work alongside the brand team?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think it's fair to say we're work in progress with this one. We probably will be for quite a while once we try to understand how they connected together. So like you say, I'm sure everyone's probably fully aware of price comparison advertising on TV and above the line. It's out there for a reason. We're trying to drive brand demand, right, which will manifest in PPC brands, SEO traffic, direct to site, and sort of like through into other channels as that sort of goes through the funnel. Now, obviously, brand have their own measures around performance, so their typical run rates, kind of reach. However, our goal is how we connect that to your point. And we have probably 3 areas we do that. There's a planning function where we use an econometric model that we've built over a number of years and got a lot of confidence in. That's great from the planning perspective. We know that when we invest a certain amount in certain sort of channels like TV, we can fairly accurately predict the type of uplift that I have in terms of demand and how that will flow through into our site. However, as more of a planning tool, when it comes to optimizing, we need a little bit more sort of interim measures. So we're looking at, we talked about, I guess, the brand demand. So we look at, in real terms, the actual search demand, how that's tracking against our targets that we put in play that will give us the number of quotes that follow through into our sales. And also the share of search voice, right? We want to make sure that we either maintain or ideally increasing our share of that market. And then alongside that, then we look at how it flows into the website. So the different brand advertising will be targeting different audiences and demographics and profiles. We then start to see, okay, well, in terms of the traffic to our site, is that being reflected in what we're seeing in terms of the percentage mix? Is that flowing through into the quote profiles, and does it go through into our base ultimately? And I guess those last two is where we then dovetail that with all the work that happens in my team about how we convert that efficiently. So we're going through this process. Right now we've been building on it throughout the last year and into this year, and the insights are definitely there in terms of giving us a bit more around confidence that we're putting our above the line media into the right areas that drives our bottom line.
Right, absolutely. And I think there's something like 2/3 to 3/4 of brands still use last click as a way to attribute when they're predominantly digital. Some people have moved to multi-touch. You guys, when we first started talking, were talking about incrementality already. It feels like there's brands moving towards it, but the most have not really got an operating model to do that. So how do you think about kind of incrementality and like where you invest kind of new money?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, basically, yeah, we very much look at sort of trade and profit as a marketing team as our first line of thought, right? Much like many businesses. And that's kind of like obviously our business outcome, our fundamental goal. But when we start to work down into the individual channels, I guess as we look across the customer journey, we recognize where we're putting certain levels of activity like display, be that prospecting or retargeting. We want to make sure it's driving an uplift, right? Because if it's not, it's either wasted budget or we're duplicating sales. So it's really key for us to understand that. So we build out, I guess, subsets of KPIs throughout the journey, which might be, like I said, the example of display or Facebook. It is about getting to a model where we know that if we generate conversions and meet a certain set of criteria, which we've tested, which is the key part, we've tested in order to understand that drives an uplift, a percentage uplift. We can then record those sales against that criteria, and then we've got effectively confidence in the fact that is actually a new sale, it's net new, it's not been cast somewhere else. So we apply that type of rigor to all new channels. They look different in terms of how we do them because it's different ways in which we test them. So the display one is different from from Facebook, and where we look at it in PPC, it's slightly different. Affiliate's a different model entirely. That's really down to validation. So there's a number of different routes we try to engage and implement.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a balance of obviously the econometrics to understand what's coming through on a more kind of macro level, and then running lots of experiments and lift tests to kind of balance that with econometrics. Yeah. So you touched, Pete, on the test with Adform, and I think you're probably okay to share that we were thinking that looking at a way to understand whether the value of the Google inventory was high enough quality, whether it was truly generating incremental lift. So how do you think about like the walled gardens, like the Googles and Facebook versus the open web? It's been discussion this morning already, and also like the world of when there isn't any third-party cookies. How much do you think about that or worry about that?
Yeah, it's been on our radar for a little while, right? A year or so. Obviously, things are accelerating slightly with most recent updates. I think, as a marketer, we naturally want to track, measure, we want to target, understand, about prospects and customers. But obviously, that's about to change. I think where I sit at the moment, I think you probably have people. I think the gentleman before was talking about, the major walled gardens of the world are really playing a power game under the umbrella of privacy. But as brands and advertiser, I've got to have a plan, right? And I think the reality is I don't know the outcome, but we're looking at it from a perspective. We're using our customer journey. We're going through every single interaction that the customer or prospect could have with our comms, our content, our site, and so forth. And for each interaction, assessing obviously the level of data that's being shared, first party, third party, if it's in a walled garden, to what extent we can stitch it together. And I think crucially for the advertiser, what value that audience might have to us across the journey, because we're probably going to have to make compromises somewhere. And I'd rather compromise on something that's slightly less valuable to me than the higher value pieces. So once we've mapped that, which we're in the process of doing, we're going to speak to all our partners, right? We're going to go and ask them about their current state and future state. And then fortunately, we've got, I guess, some internal skill set from data engineers and scientists and our analytics team. And, our recent acquisition by Future, they have their own network. So there's probably some skill set we can lean on there around sort of IDs as well. So I think we'll then take a view from a number of key stakeholders about, I guess, our mid to long-term MarTech partners, really. So I think I don't have the answer yet, but certainly we're going to go follow that route as a plan to try and get the answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then what I'm hearing is that you're investing time in looking at new potential routes and testing it, which I think is exactly what people should be doing, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's got the perfect answer, but we were talking earlier about the fact that 90% of marketeers haven't got a plan for when cookies disappears. It sounds like you guys are at least on your way to a plan, which I think is a good place to be.
That's certainly our hope, right? We're making moves to get to that point.
Yeah. So I have opening up questions to the audience. So if anyone wants to fire them in, I have live kind of questions coming in. So one of the questions is, it's obviously very interesting to see Future acquiring GoCompare and you guys moving into that family. Like, obviously, you can't say too much, but what does that mean? What does that mean for kind of why would Future want to buy an insurance aggregator?
Yeah, well, I think primarily it's about the very much the ethos which their Future's about providing good content, as impartial content to a degree, to the users, to their customers, and providing good experiences. So I think they actually want to expand into the financial FS sector. We, by nature of our product, are sort of providing impartial, based on customer input, options for people to buy insurance or FS products. So I think the kind of that route of wanting to go into FS and then us being a sort of a medium between actually, providing a broad option to the customer is a decent fit. And there are some sort of technical aspects within the way Future operates as well, which I think there's some opportunities.
I think the whole how does content as a discovery kind of point lead to commerce is a really interesting piece. And obviously lots of brands are trying to think about how to navigate that. You're in a family that's got lots of content and audience, and you're very good at driving people through to transactions. So I think it's a really interesting marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question, if I can, Pete, cool. Which is if you were giving advice to any marketeers thinking about the landscape ahead, what would that piece of advice be?
Or what the landscape, just in sort of general? Or are we talking particular around kind of like
what's happening with cookies disappearing, Google and Facebook and Amazon being quite kind of controlling, but the need for brands like yourselves to invest in kind of brand and TV for saliency. Any advice?
Yeah. I think broadly speaking, it's something the stuff we've probably touched on already, which is data is always at the heart of it, and it's the ability to test to understand the impact that those levels of activity have on your bottom line, right? Or even if it's micro conversions ahead of the bottom line. But I think it'd be not unwise, but it'd be difficult to kind of predict exactly what that's going to look like for ourselves, even without us going through a testing framework, which is kind of what we already do. And I think that, along with borrowing expertise of people that really understand data, right, and kind of like the challenges we're about to face. Like we internally on my marketing team, we don't have that. Happy to hold our hands up and say that's not there. I'm sure we've got it within the team, but we'll definitely probably be looking to lean on expertise outside of us as well, because it's an industry challenge, right? So let's try and understand where the industry's going with it. It's going to help give us a little bit of direction, but underpinning that, as I said, is testing of channels.
Great. No, and I think that is a great answer. I mean, the reality is no one has the perfect answer, but many brands are trying to move towards that test and kind of constant iteration, but it sounds like you guys have obviously got that inbuilt in your business. So look, Pete, thank you so much for making the time for us this morning. Some great nuggets in there. I look forward to seeing you soon.